Welcome back to another episode of Super Mystery Bros. I'm your favorite co-host, Kyle, and with me, as always, is the host with the most, Nasty Nate. Nate, how you doing?
I'm good, man. And speaking of, that was a really good intro. That was probably
Thank you.
Better than I could have done
it. I thought about it a little bit before we hopped on here.
It paid off.
Nate, what are we talking about today?
So today we are going to revisit the infamous skyjacking of DB Cooper. Now, we covered this one in episode 21 about almost 3 years ago now. But as it turns out, we had some of our information wrong and we had some wrong assumptions. So I think for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to go back. We're going to revisit the case with all the new information. I dove down a huge rabbit hole over the past about 3 weeks, and I wanted to come back and revisit this, correct some of the wrong assumptions that we made back in the day, and hopefully we'll move the needle a little bit in the right direction.
That sounds good. Why don't you kick us off then?
Well, right before we begin, I just want to say that this is going to be completely unscripted. This is going to be kind of just a discussion between Kyle and I, and we're just going to kind of go over certain points. I've got some notes in front of me, but other than that, this is just going to be completely unscripted. No creative writing or anything like that. So, Kyle?
Yeah?
Kyle?
Nate?
Are you ready?
Man, I sure hope so.
All right. So here's something that I didn't know about DB Cooper was that about 11 or 13 days prior to the hijacking, a Canadian guy named Paul Sini tried to hijack a DC-8 plane up in Canada. And did you hear about this, by the way, Kyle?
I did not.
So Paul Sini was this alcoholic lunatic, basically, who got on this plane and he basically hatched this plan to do the DB Cooper hijacking before DB Cooper did. However, his plan was just absolutely dumb. And so what he did was he hopped on this plane with a shotgun and a bunch of sticks of dynamite. And he hijacked this plane, not like DB Cooper did, where DB Cooper quietly hijacked this plane, and nobody knew that he hijacked the plane except for the flight crew. This guy was very overt, acting erratically, and what's funny is that this guy got wasted drunk on the flight, and one of the flight crew members ended up hitting him upside the head with an axe. And taking him down.
With the blunt side or the business side?
You know, that's a good question. I could not figure that out. I was thinking the same question too, but he did survive. He just got really fucked up.
Probably the blunt side.
Yeah, but the funny thing about this is that, he demanded the plane fly to some airport. He got parachutes just like DB Cooper did. And what's funny is that the DC-8 does not have an aft staircase. So this plan would have never have worked even if it had gone his way. Like, he would have had to have jumped out of one of the side doors of the airplane, but there's no way for the plane to actually slow down slow enough to where he could have been able to open one of the doors. So, the whole time this flight crew is probably thinking, this absolute fucking cretin.
Are you sure? I didn't look up what a DC-8 was, but didn't paratroopers jump out of DC-8s in Vietnam?
No, that was the 727. Or no, sorry. I don't know what plane paratroopers jumped out during the Vietnam era, but it was not a DC-8. DC-8 was a commercial plane.
Well, the Vietnam utilized a Douglas DC something. I can't remember the number.
But we're talking about an airline flight, man. We're not talking about the shit with the open side doors.
All right.
He thought he could just open up one of the side doors and just jump out with a parachute.
Gotcha.
Whereas, even if the cabin wasn't pressurized, the slipstream on the outside is just going to keep the door pushed shut.
Gotcha.
So anyway, there's a point of contention there whether or not DB Cooper was a copycat of this guy, and it seems like he might have said to himself, like, seen this on the news and been like, "Hey, I could do that better than that fucking buffoon." But the point against that is that it only took 11 days between inspiration to action. So there's one more point there to think about when it comes to DB Cooper. Was this something he had in motion for months or years before this, or only 11 days? We don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, but I don't know. You mentioned a lot of crazy things about that flight, but I get that it was the 70s, but you didn't really lean on the crazy part about that flight is there was a shotgun and an axe on this flight. Just full-blown, like, Elmer Fudd style.
It's Canada in the 1970s, man. Nobody expected that shit to happen.
Looney-Tune Airlines. I'm sure it's totally legal to just bring a shotgun on board. Same thing with your axe. And then he was like, "Oh, surprise, I have dynamite." And they're like, "We don't have rules against dynamite? Oh, maybe we should have rules against dynamite."
They probably just weren't checking people for that kind of stuff. It's Canada in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So anyway, another point. So Kyle, can you, let's just get to the DB Cooper case real quick. Kyle, can you give me a quick recap of the DB Cooper story? Just the best you can. Even if it's broken and busted, I'll try to correct you along the way.
All right. Well, I did write down the date because I can't remember dates for shit. But on November 24th, 1971, this is Thanksgiving Eve, right? A dude described as nondescript, right? Just a medium build, white guy, whatever. He strolls into an airport, right? Back in the 1970s, where you don't need to do security checks, you don't even need to give your driver's license. He pays cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle. Yeah, from where did he fly out of?
Portland.
Yeah. So short flight.
Only a 30-minute flight.
Yeah, short flight, right? Cash over the counter, no ID. He puts his name down as DB Cooper. He gets his ticket. He puts his name down as Dan Cooper. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for correcting me. Yes, Dan Cooper. Right. Goes to the gate, gets on the plane, they take off, he orders a drink, and then as they're in the air, he slips the stewardess a note, and the note says, "I have a bomb in my briefcase, right? I want to speak to the pilots."
Well, he says, "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit beside me." And this was to Flight Attendant Florence Schaffner, and Florence Schaffner, she initially puts the note in her purse without even reading it. And DB Cooper, or the man known as Dan Cooper at this point, turns around to look at her. She's sitting on the where the flight attendants sit in the back. There's like a little fold out chair.
Yeah.
So this was on the bulkhead door, and he turns around to look at her. He's staring at her. She's staring at him like, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong? And and then he finally speaks up and he says, "Miss, you better take a look at that note. I've got a bomb." And she pulls it out. She looks at it. She reads it. It says like, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit beside me." And she looks back up at him and she's like, "Is this for real?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am." Something along those lines. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So reluctantly, she sits down next to him. He opens the briefcase to show what appeared to be a few sticks of dynamite or a bundle of dynamite and some wires, contraption, for someone who doesn't know what a bomb looks like, sure looks like a bomb in a briefcase. And he gives his demands, which are, "I want 200 grand in cash and 4 parachutes." And to her credit and the other flight crew's credit, they managed to handle all this without alerting any other passengers, right? They get a hold of the FBI via the captain, via their little on-plane telephones.
Well,
they
they're radioing in to the control tower, and they're we'll get into this later, but they're squawking the hijack code on the aircraft's transponder.
Yeah, but that is later. But yeah, so they circle the plane around. They tell the passengers that they're just having a mechanical issue and they're waiting to get clearance to land or to burn up fuel, for safety reasons. But in reality, the FBI is collecting this money and these parachutes. And finally, the plane lands and everyone departs on the tarmac, minus, what was it? The pilot, the co-pilot, the radio operator, and one remaining stewardess who was
flight engineer, and oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, what was it? Tina Mucklow, who was the remaining?
Yeah, Tina Mucklow was the sole flight attendant that was left on board. And as everybody's departing, none of the passengers knew that they had been hijacked. Like they walk out into the airport. There's a bunch of media there filming them and they're like, "What the hell's going on here?" So none of them knew what was going on, and so Tina Mucklow's left on board, and DB Cooper, he basically, so Florence Schaffner forgets her purse behind DB Cooper. Like she had stashed her purse behind him somewhere, and she's like, she comes back on board, and she asks him, "Can I grab my purse? I forgot it." And he's like, "Sure, I won't bite." Just we don't have too many quotes from DB Cooper, but one of them is he's like, "Sure, I won't bite." And so she grabs her purse, gets off the plane, and anyway, Kyle, go on.
All right. So the exchange happens, right? So basically, he has used this briefcase bomb to hold all his passengers hostage. He has released them, right, in exchange for a duffel bag or two of money. Right, $200,000 in $20 bills, and 4 parachutes, 2 mains, 2 reserve chutes, right? And then he tells the FBI, "Get off my plane," right? And he takes back off, right? So now he's got the 4 flight crew with him, and they're flying. He tells them to fly to Mexico City at a very exact speed, altitude, flaps at I think like 15 degrees, gear down, and the aft staircase down. Now, we don't really have these nowadays, but back then, some older planes, people could and would enter and exit a plane via a staircase that just lowered down from the ass end of the plane. So this thing is down while they're flying, all right?
Yeah.
The flight crew says, "We're not going to make it to Mexico City," right? It's really at like our maximum range at our optimal cruising altitude and everything. And it's like, you're really, we're burning up more fuel following all your rules. And like, we're going to have to stop in Reno to refuel. And he said, "That's fine, whatever."
So I just got to stop you right here just to make a quick pedantic correction. So all of this is happening still while they're on the tarmac, all of these negotiations about where they're going to go. Cooper originally wants them to fly to Mexico City, but they tell him, "Hey, under these parameters that you want, with the gear down, flying at 10,000 feet and with the flaps at 15 degrees, we're not making it to Mexico City. So we're going to have to stop to refuel somewhere." And they give him different options. They say like Reno, San Francisco, and I can't remember the other one, somewhere else, right? And he's like, "Oh, Reno sounds good." So they decide upon Reno. And also one other correction. It's not the FBI. The FBI does not really get involved with the money. So this is all the airline handling this. So the airline,
Gotcha.
The airline gets in touch with Sea First Bank in Seattle. And Sea First Bank, what happens is they actually have $250,000 in $20 bills just ready for situations like this, with all of the serial numbers of the cash already recorded. So it's like already ready to go.
Well, right? That's pretty slick. I was wondering like how they recorded all these serial numbers in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I didn't know either, but it turns out that they already had this as a contingency plan for situations like this. Gotcha. So that's the money. That is the money that they used. So anyway, he asks for a knapsack, which, is kind of an old-timey term for a backpack. So he wants this put in a backpack, but unfortunately for him, they kind of like ignore that request and they give it to him in this like white, it's like this shitty white cloth bag that doesn't even have like a zipper on it. So he's like, ah, shit. So we'll get into this further on in the episode, but yeah, he didn't get exactly what he wanted. And then as for the parachutes, he asked for 2 front reserves and 2 back parachutes. Typically, these are the front reserve chutes clip onto the straps of the back parachutes using D-rings. You know, those little metal rings on the front strap of the parachutes. However, the ones that he got were not. So he got these kind of for the back parachutes. He got the style of parachutes that military aircrew members wear, you know, to bail out of a falling aircraft or a shot down aircraft, right? So they're not going to have D-rings on them to attach the front reserves to. So he didn't have like an official way to attach front reserves to the back. So just something to keep in mind. He was pissed about that, but you know, he made the jump anyway. So where were we in the story again? Okay, so we were at the part where they negotiated that they would fly to Reno. So
yes,
what happens next, Kyle?
So they take off, right? And during the flight, the staircase is lowered because before they took off, they told him that they could not take off with the staircase down because it would cause damage to the plane and yada yada yada. So he reluctantly agrees to that. So while they're flying,
one thing I just want to insert something here. He said they can do it, but it's fine. We can open it during the flight. He said something along those lines. He's like, they can do it, but it's fine. We can open it during the flight.
Yeah. You know, he also demanded that the whole flight crew remain in the cockpit with the door closed the whole time, so they couldn't really see what he was up to back there, right? Yeah. So they're at 10,000 feet. They're cruising at the speed he wants to cruise at. They got the gear down. They got the flaps down, all that other stuff. And then at, what was it? It's like roughly 8:12 p.m. There's varying sources on this. There is a bang and a jolt. The nose of the aircraft comes up, and then in the cockpit, everyone's ears pop at the same time, right? So there's a huge change in pressure, right? So this is really important. What? Oh, I thought you were giggling at me. You're just shuffling papers.
No, that was my chair. But okay. you are right. But let's just clarify something. So the plane takes off at about 7:40, and so right around 33 minutes, somewhere around 31, 33 minutes in, they feel this pressure bump.
So yeah, they feel the pressure bump. They and then it's a otherwise smooth flight. They land in Reno. And then they call back to him on the intercom to see if he's okay. He doesn't answer. The police or FBI, they swarm the plane, and he's gone. All right, he's gone along with 2 parachutes and the money, leaving behind a black clip-on tie, an ashtray full of cigarettes. Anything else did he leave behind?
Well, like technically, he left
2 hairs.
Yeah, like a couple hairs, and he left behind his drinking cup, which was a plastic cup, you know, because he ordered a drink, which was a 7 and 7, basically. It was bourbon and 7-Up. It's funny because my dad used to drink those out of like wax Dixie cups. It was kind of funny, but so 7 and 7, and back in the 70s, I guess this was kind of a I wouldn't say like an upscale drink, but it was kind of a trendy drink back in those days. 7 and 7. And so he left behind the plastic cup, but notably no fingerprints, at least no full fingerprints. He left behind some partials and also his palm print, allegedly his palm print. I mean, presumably his palm print. So it's kind of surmised that he put super glue on his fingertips to ensure that he wouldn't leave fingerprints.
Maybe he just wiped down his area.
That's could be, but that doesn't fully explain the partials, you know?
Well, I mean, maybe he hastily wiped it down, just got like some of these fingerprints. Like, doesn't that
Could
explain
be,
a partial
but
bit better than super gluing the ends of your fingers?
I guess I don't know. It could, but it's generally believed that he super glued the ends of his fingers.
That's weird. I mean, with all the from what I hear, very detailed physical descriptions that these flight attendants gave him, the flight attendants that were the closest to him, right, who remembered as much as they could, you think you would notice someone with super glued fingertips, right? Have you ever super glued your fingertips? Like it
Only
really
by accident.
Yeah, it changes the color of your fingertips, and the moment that super glue dries, it immediately starts to crack, and you have these cracked fingers, right?
Well,
It's
it could explain the partials.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's not the point. The point though is that he didn't leave any full fingerprints. Only some shitty partials. But he left his palm print behind. But the problem with the palm print is that nobody was taking palm prints back in those days. The military wasn't taking palm prints. The police weren't taking people's palm prints, so they didn't have anything to match it to. Except if they found a suspect, they could say, "Hey, give us your palm print."
Yeah.
But that's as far as that could go. So, unbeknownst to most people, DB Cooper had two bags. So one was the briefcase with the bomb in it, and then the other was described as this like green shopping bag that was about the similar width and length as the briefcase, and about 4 inches thick. So nobody knows exactly what he had in the bag. Maybe we can speculate about that, Kyle. But there was this green shopping bag. Not too many people who are familiar with the case know about this, but he was spotted with a green bag. So what do you think could have been in that?
I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Does it even come into play? Right?
Not during the hijacking, but we do know that it was no longer there when he left the plane.
Intriguing.
So he could have, I mean, some people speculate he could have had
jump
goggles, change of clothes, a gun.
Yes, jump goggles. Yeah.
I mean, I think that was probably part of the. I think that he had to have had jump goggles in there. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise. He could have had a gun, a pistol, in case somebody calls him on his bullshit bomb. It's like, we don't know if the bomb was real, but if it was fake, he might have had a gun in there, as like a contingency plan.
Yeah.
But, the green shopping bag is a mystery within a mystery. We don't know exactly what was in it.
Yeah. What was this like? So this was part of like the official FBI interviews with the flight crew.
Yes, I can't remember exactly who was the one who spotted this. It might have been a passenger actually who spotted this. He had it underneath his seat. So it never came out like during the hijacking, but he had it stashed underneath his seat.
If only one passenger brought up this bag, is it even credible?
It is a good question, but to my understanding, it is considered credible.
Yeah. I mean the bomb the bomb briefcase wasn't there, right? Like that was gone too.
And yeah, of course, he took that with him,
yeah.
or he might have just chucked it out the back over the wilderness.
Another piece of evidence never found.
Yeah, exactly. We also know that he brought a pocket knife on board, and we know this because he was seen basically disemboweling one of the front reserve chutes in order to wrap the money bag around him and secure the money bag. So what's interesting about that is that so DB Cooper, according to Tina Mucklow, like in the last moment that she saw him, he used some of the shroud lines from one of the reserve chutes to tie around his waist, and then he used the other ends of the shroud lines to wrap around the money bag. So in other words, as he's jumping out the back, he might have he might have learned this as a paratrooper or learned this from paratroopers, with the drag bags. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but if you're jumping out of a plane and you've got a bunch of stuff with you, a bunch of heavy stuff with you, you don't want that just attached to your body because it'll throw you off balance. So what you do is you kind of have it dangle below you so that it keeps you balanced on your descent.
Gotcha.
And also, this would also help him judge when he's about to hit the ground because he's jumping at night. So he can hear or feel the bag hit the ground first. He'll have that, second or two warning that he's about to hit the ground, and then, brace for impact. So it is interesting. It does point to the fact that he might have been a paratrooper back in the day. And he was estimated to be in his mid to late 40s. This would put him right around the age bracket of being a World War II veteran. But, of course, that's not confirmed, but it puts him in that same generation.
Yeah, but I mean, he also could have been a Vietnam veteran,
if he's on the older side, yeah, of course. But in Vietnam, there weren't too many paratroopers in Vietnam. I mean, there were paratroopers, but they weren't used as paratroopers. They're not jumping out of the back of planes in Vietnam. Choppers replaced that because of all the dense jungle.
Yes, true. I mean, they still had airborne rangers in
Of course. I'm not saying Vietnam, they didn't. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's just not as common, But yeah. I mean, if he was like former spec ops, which some of the top suspects were, right, former Vietnam spec ops, Mac VSOG, you would have been trained in all of that, whether you did it in combat or not.
Of course. But we don't know. I mean, it is kind of going out on a limb. It does fit neatly, but I have a sneaking suspicion that even if you find a suspect that fits all of these speculative rabbit holes, it's probably not going to be the right guy. I think some of these are going to fit well, and then some of them are just not.
Yeah.
So we do know that he was a smoker of Raleigh filter tip cigarettes. This company I don't believe is around anymore, but he smoked 7 cigarettes, and Tina Mucklow, I think it was Tina Mucklow, bummed one off of him as well, because he offered her a cigarette and she said, "Oh, no, thanks, I quit." And he said, "Well, I bet you want one now, right now, don't you?" And she's like, "Yeah, all right." So, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't remember if this was Florence Schaffner or Tina Mucklow, but one of them smoked one of his cigarettes with him as she's sitting next to him. So on the flight from Seattle to Reno, he offered the flight crew Benzedrine. So he brought Benzedrine on board, which is kind of similar to Adderall. It's an amphetamine. And she's like, no, they're not going to accept that because the subject of their long working hours was coming up. So This was a guy who brought Benzedrine with him.
Yeah, to make sure that they stayed sharp, I guess,
Yeah, exactly. He also showed some compassion to them. While they're gassing up the plane in Seattle, he also ordered like food to be served to the crew. Hey, bring some food for the crew as well. So anyway, the other thing that we can speculate on was the bomb real? What do you think? Do you think the bomb was real or fake? So I want to describe the bomb for you because you are an electrician. I think you're the guy to ask about this. So there was one of those giant D-cell batteries in the suitcase with wires going to 8 sticks of dynamite, kind of towards the center of the pack of dynamite. It was 4 on top of 4. So they basically, what's known about the bomb is that if this bomb was real, all the components of this bomb was real, it would have gone off. Like the FBI actually did test this and it would have gone off. So But
Well, so the FBI tested a bomb built off of the description of Florence Schaffner and nobody
no,
else. Like,
Tina, I think it was Tina Mucklow. It might have been. One of them had a father who was an electrician. So this lady had kind of secondhand knowledge of electrical stuff. And based on her description, it sounded like it could have been real. Doesn't mean it was, but it could have been real.
yeah. But what I'm saying is, like I thought that only one flight attendant briefly saw the inside of this suitcase.
Yeah, it might have been Florence Schaffner then.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't. I mix those two up constantly.
Yeah, which is fine. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just whoever did see it, like, they must have like close to a photographic memory, to be able to tell this to like an FBI bomb tech, or FBI investigators for them to recreate the bomb that she thinks she saw,
Yeah. No, it's true. And we'll get into that too, because both of their memories are really hazy shortly after. Like when it comes to like the descriptions of DB Cooper and the composite drawings of him, it's only several months later that they tell the FBI, like, hey, look, stop showing us people to, stop asking if this person is DB Cooper. Like, I totally forget what this guy looks like. So, do we trust their memories? I take it with a grain of salt personally, because if you don't remember what this guy's face looks like just a few months later, I mean, I don't know if I would trust your recollection of what the bomb looks like that you saw for a couple seconds.
Yeah. Because
you were with this guy for what, 5 hours or something, more than 5 hours, and you forget what he looks like just less than a year later.
Yeah,
I don't.
All right. So you asked me, do I think it's real or not? With no technical evidence, because I'm gonna say there's actually zero technical evidence to go on. I say it was fake, right? Because of how well he seemed to treat the crew, right, and how calmly he handled like the whole situation. I think that this bomb was fake.
It's definitely a possibility, and most people do believe that it was fake. So you're not alone there. It's hard for me to say if it was real or not, but I think I lean more towards it being real. And the reason why I lean towards it being real, I'm split down the middle, right? But most people think that it was fake. I just give the possibility that it was real more weight than the average person, if that makes sense. Because I think that what we're dealing with is not the gentleman hijacker that we've all been, kind of like brainwashed to believe he was. I think the average person, when they think of DB Cooper, they imagine, Sean Connery as James Bond,
Yeah.
Someone like that. But I'm thinking that that's probably not who this guy was. I'm thinking that if this guy is willing to inconvenience that many people for 200 grand, put people's lives in jeopardy, I'm thinking that this guy might have been a psychopath. And another reason that leads me to believe that he might have been a psychopath is because of how calm and collected he was almost the entire time. He's got that glib charm that psychopaths have. He's staying calm under pressure, because psychopaths typically have that muted stress response.
Yeah.
So it's like, I kind of lean into the possibility that this guy was a psychopath. And that doesn't mean that he's like an axe murderer. That's not what I mean. I just mean that he doesn't really have much in the way of empathy for other people. He has that.
I don't know. If he had zero empathy, like, why would he order, food for the crew? Well,
if he can
sociopath might be more accurate.
It's charming. Yeah, sociopath could be as well, but it's that the charming aspect of him, right? And also, it's like, why not order that? There's no downside to doing that. If you can get people on your side, I mean, it makes them less likely to want to throw a monkey wrench in your plan.
Fair point.
So, I mean, even if you look at this from a cold calculating standpoint, it's still, I think it's still a good thing to plan ahead for.
All
so
right.
Anyway, I think that he was serious when he said that I'm not going to jail. And I think that, if he had to blow himself and everyone else up with him, I think that it wasn't something I think he was planning to do, but I think that it was a contingency plan.
I would like to think, right, if I were DB Cooper and I was like an actual psychopath and I didn't really care about other people's lives and I got what I wanted and I had a real bomb on the plane, right, that right before I jumped out of the plane, I would set a 5-minute timer on my bomb, and then as I'm parachuting to the ground, I could watch this one spectacular firework go off in the night sky.
Well, but there's no reason for him to do that, though.
There's no reason for psychopaths to kill anybody aside from they like to do it, right?
No, but that's not what I mean by psychopath. I'm just talking about, we're not talking about like a murderer. We're just talking about a guy who is only out for himself and doesn't really care about other people. He's not going to kill other people if it doesn't, benefit his bottom line.
Okay.
So I just think that this might have been a contingency plan for him. He's like, well, if they're going to try to take me out, they're not going to do what I say, then, it's not my fault. Bam. Right. We're all dead.
Not to keep counterpointing all your counterpoints, but to one's benefit, if you were a psychopath and you didn't care about other people's lives, it would benefit you to blow up the plane after you jump out of it to remove even more evidence, right?
I guess, but
there would be no hairs, there would be no cigarettes, there would be no drink cup.
I guess that is a really good point, dude. That is a really good point. But also, why would you do that when you know that the entire law enforcement in the U.S. is going to be hunting you down? That's going to really crank up the heat if you do that.
Yeah. Plus, if you hadn't factored in the whole change in air pressure when you jumped out of the plane, you might assume that like no one knows when and where you jumped out of said plane, but blowing the plane up would probably narrow that area down a lot.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Cooper's language and his possible motive. So when he was talking with Florence Schaffner, God, again, I mixed these two up in my head. Florence Schaffner was the one he handed the note to originally. She goes up to the cockpit to relay, write down all the demands and stuff like that to give to the crew. And at some point, Tina Mucklow is the one that takes over and sits next to Cooper. But she asks him, why are you targeting our airline? Is it because you have a grudge against us or something? And he's just kind of quips back, it's not that I have a grudge against your airline. It's just that I have a grudge. So a lot of people look into that and say like, wow, what could he possibly mean by that? But I'm not sure. I'm not so sure that he meant anything by that. What do you think? Because I think you've probably heard that quote before too, have you?
Yeah, well, we went over it the first time we did the episode about this. We didn't discuss it really, but the quote did come up. I don't know. You might be right. He might not have meant anything by it. I mean, he got away with all of this. He might be so cold and calculated that anything he's done, anything he said may be on purpose to be like a red herring,
Yeah, see, that's kind of what I think too. And when he was talking to Florence Schaffner, he asked her where she's from, and she says Minnesota, and he says, "Oh, Minnesota's fine country." It's just like this very generic statement, it
Yeah.
doesn't really mean anything, but
Yeah.
you can look into that and read into it anything you want. So, I put that into a, not the trash pile, but just stuff that I don't think about, it's just not, doesn't mean anything. You can read whatever you want into it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the other thing that he says that kind of boggles the mind is when he says, I want $200,000 in negotiable US currency. And most people, when they hear that, they're like, what the fuck does negotiable US currency mean? But there's kind of a discrepancy here where it's actually one of the crew members says that he said circulated US currency, and the other thinks that he said negotiable US currency. So it's like, we don't know what negotiable means. I mean, I guess, what do you think it means?
I don't know.
It might not have even been. It might not have even been negotiable. He might have just said circulated U.S. currency, which would make more sense to me, because that would imply that he doesn't want these like crisp, clean, brand new bills.
Exactly. Yeah.
He wants stuff that looks normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff that's been in a wallet for a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I don't look into this rabbit hole very, very much either. I mean, I just think that he meant he wanted stuff that's already been circulated.
Yeah.
But it also goes back to like, was he not from the US? Was he from Canada or something?
I mean, negotiable currency could have been a more common term back then.
Yeah, which it was, but it's still kind of strange, man. I mean, I don't know what to make of that, honestly. So it's another thing I put into that pile that I don't think about. I think he just meant that he wanted circulated currency.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, we're going off of conflicting statements. One person said one thing, another person said another thing,
Yeah, exactly. So again, he wanted it delivered all the money delivered in a knapsack, but instead he got like this generic ass bank bag, which it didn't have a zipper on it. And he had to like fold it up kind of and like wrap a bunch of shroud lines around it to secure it to himself. Which, this implies to some people that he might have easily lost it on the jump, but I don't know. So Kyle, I don't know if you can picture in your head, but he used the shroud lines from one of the reserve chutes. Wrap around the bag a bunch of times, and then he tied the other end of the shroud lines around his waist to kind of
So but we don't know what kind of slack there was, so so your drag bag theory may be correct, may not be correct. He may have just tried to tie this whole thing to his body as tightly as possible so he doesn't lose all the cash he just worked so hard on getting.
The thing that I can't get past, though, is I think this guy had to have had parachuting experience. I mean, there's really no way around, because for him to MacGyver that, exactly like a paratrooper would back in like World War II, Korea, Vietnam, like having a drag bag and knowing what a drag bag was, and like knowing that you can't just like wrap it around yourself.
Okay, so here's a counter argument to that. If he wanted a drag bag, he would have requested a drag bag, right? Instead of like a main.
Not necessarily though, because he might have just asked. He might have planned to use the shroud lines from one of the reserves. Because remember, he asked for 2 sets of parachutes, right? So that presumably the authorities wouldn't sabotage them. Thinking that he's going to take a hostage with him, right?
Yeah.
So he might have said, oh, what I'll do is I'll use some of the shroud lines from one of the unused parachutes to secure the money back to me. Because remember, he asked for a knapsack, basically a backpack. He could have been like, well, I'm just going to tie a couple of these shroud lines around the backpack, tie it to my waist, and that'll be that. Because remember, he doesn't want the authorities to know what his plan is. So he's being very vague about what he's planning to do.
Yeah.
He asked for a drag bag that automatically,
Yeah. Okay, fair. All right, so if a knapsack is a backpack, basically he wants something with a zipper and straps, you know. So yeah, he wants something that won't fly open during free fall and something that can easily be secured to him, you know. I I I don't think he planned to butcher a parachute just to get the lines or the shroud out of it to use
You might be
as
right. You might be right that he might
yeah.
not have planned that, but the fact that he did it and he improvised in that fashion, I mean, I think that he knew what a drag bag was and he MacGyvered one together. And also what's funny is Tina Mucklow saw him putting on the parachute, and she remarked that it looked like he had done this many times before.
Yeah.
And another key detail here is that when they brought the parachutes on board, they also provided some written instructions on how to operate the parachute. And she tried to hand it to him, and he said that I won't be needing that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so this is the early 70s, you know. People can't just go on YouTube, right? There's not like tons of like movies and TVs out, you know, to know anything about parachutes, especially like the need for a parachute with D-rings, with a need for reserve chutes. Like that's not just something you pick up just bored scrolling through your phone, right? Like that's specialized knowledge, and I'm guessing there was not a whole lot of recreational skydiving back then. Not that there was none, because I know that they contacted recreational skydivers and instructors for info on the parachutes and to get the parachutes. I'm just saying, like it wasn't super common. You know, so either this dude did jump out of planes for fun, or he was trained to jump out of them for a living.
I do agree with that. I do not think that that was his first jump.
Yeah, not a chance.
Yeah. So I think that we can mark that on our list of like who he probably was somebody who has jumped out of an airplane before. I mean, it's funny because out of all the copycat hijackers, there were a handful or at least two that I can think of off the top of my head who have never, that would have been the first time they had jumped out.
Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, let's not talk about that yet. But anyway, what's funny is that did you hear about the Air America connection, the possible Air America connection?
No.
So are you familiar with what Air America was?
Is like a precursor to American Airlines?
No. So back in like the Vietnam era, this was like a fake airline that the CIA was running to drop supplies into special forces teams and that sort of thing, like into Southeast Asia. And it would just be like on radar and stuff. It would just look like a commercial airliner, right? But right. They were using 727s just like this to push supplies out the back. And what's really strange, or I guess coincidental, is that when they would make these drops, they would have the gear down and use 15 degrees of flaps, and they would push the supplies out the back staircase. It actually wasn't a staircase on these modified 727s. There was more of a ramp. So they'd push these pallets out the back and drop them over Southeast Asia using 15 degrees with the gear down, just like DB Cooper asked for.
Interesting.
Yeah. But one thing that there's a really big turd in the punch bowl for me when it comes to the possibility that DB Cooper was a pilot. And that would be him not knowing that the plane would not make it to Mexico City under those flight conditions. So if you look up the maximum range of a 727 on paper, it would barely be able to reach Mexico City. So I think what he did was he's like looking for cities somewhere outside the US that would fall under that, like the maximum range of the 727. He's like, oh, I'm going to choose Mexico City. It's like right at the maximum, but that's only flying at the correct altitude with no flaps and the gear up and at the proper speed. what he was asking was for the flaps down, which creates extra drag. He's asking for the aft staircase down, also extra drag, and extra drag with the gear down, and flying at a very inefficient speed. So this is something that kind of like tells me that he was not a pilot.
Yeah.
Probably not a pilot.
Yeah. I think we should point out for our listeners who are unaware of the laws of physics when it comes to flight, increased drag equals less miles per gallon.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that he didn't know that it wouldn't be able to reach Mexico City, because this is piloting 101. This is not something that only elite pilots are going to be able to figure out. This is just, he was probably, in my opinion at least, looking up the specs, like the spec sheet of a 727. He sees the maximum range and he's like, oh, that could probably reach X destination just fine. But he didn't factor in the flap settings, the gear being down, and the speed. So
I'm wondering if he even looked up specs or just looked up like what is the longest nonstop flight, for this airline or this airplane that I'm gonna hijack. It's like, oh, this plane does make a flight from Seattle to Mexico City.
It could have been. I know that Northwest Orient, which was this airline, did not fly there, but I don't know if another airline did. But you could be right. You could be right. But yeah. I'm thinking he just wanted to send that plane soaring as far as possible so that it would give him extra time to disappear.
Yeah. He really agreed to land in Reno like rather easily. It seemed like, because the longer the plane would have been in the air, right, the longer he would have been out of the plane. And everyone just assuming he's in there. And then we're like, well, so here's the places we could land. And it's like, from Seattle to Reno, dude, that's not even halfway, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, not even. I think it was like about 2,200 miles or something, and Reno would have been, I can't remember, but it was like about 1/3 the way, something like that. So anyway, so to me, I don't think that he had a background as a pilot. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
No. Pilot, no. Someone who's jumped out of planes, yes.
Yeah. I think he was a smart guy who did his homework, but he just didn't have all the knowledge he needed. He just kind of improvised with what he could.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's see what else. Do you have anything that you want to bring up?
Let me check my notes here. Well, I've got a couple notes on some of the bigger points. If you're ready to get into them,
we are dragging this out. I think I do want to kind of speed this up a little bit and talk about some of the more pressing stuff. So there is this discrepancy when it comes to the dummy chute. Did he jump with a dummy parachute and just make a Looney-Tunes-style human-shaped hole in the ground somewhere? The answer to that is no. So the dummy chute was one of the front reserve chutes, right?
Yeah.
The two back reserve the two main parachutes that he got were perfectly functional, and these were the type of parachutes that military aircrew wear, to bail out of a doomed plane. And these are designed to basically open up under any circumstances. You could be spinning, you could be upside down. They're designed to do their job, which is to save your life. It might not let you hit the ground completely unscathed, but it's going to get you down safely enough. So, no D-rings on the front for a reserve chute. However, what is interesting is that he did secure the dummy reserve chute to the front of his the front of his chest. You know, he manually tied it. He knew what D rings were, and he was pissed that the back chute did not have D rings to secure the reserve chute with, but he tied it to himself anyway. And
so he jumps out with a main back parachute, a front reserve, and the money bag.
Correct. With the money bag kind of dangling below him as he's falling, you know, presuming that he opened the chute.
Yeah.
And one thing that, one possible reason he might have done this is another paratrooper angle. So paratroopers back in the day were trained that if they fell and they got caught in a tree, what they can do is they can open up the front reserve chute and let the shroud lines fall to the ground. Then they can kind of shimmy out of their backpack and kind of rappel down the front reserve chute. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
So that might have been why he did that.
Because the front reserve is attached to the main via the D-rings, so if your main chute is tangled in the trees and your whole harness is together, you can undo your leg straps and slide out of it, and just slide down the paracords of the dummy all the way to the ground.
So if we didn't mention it before, no parachute was ever found. No trace of this guy was ever found, except for one packet of money, which we'll get into. So anyway, so paratroopers were trained to do this. So it could have been the reason why he took the dummy chute. He wasn't planning to have to use the dummy reserve, but it might have been the more convenient option for him if he did have to rappel down from a tree.
I think it's more evidence that he was a paratrooper and not a pilot, because if these pilot bailout rigs never came with reserve chutes, he would have never asked for one, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So they gave him parachutes that he wasn't expecting. It was definitely not his first choice. He wanted regular parachutes, basically, that he could attach front reserves to, but he didn't get that. So let's talk about how we know where the plane was when he jumped. So first of all, we talked about the pressure jump. Sorry, the pressure bump. So what happened was that right before about 8:11, the flight engineer noticed that the climb indicator of the plane was jumping up and down, which they all kind of interpreted to think that it was because he's doing something back there with the aft staircase. So what they had to do is they had to like retrim the aircraft, which I don't know if you know what trim is. It's when you're flying the aircraft, you're not just holding the yoke in place like, you know, lockjawed. What you do is you have a little knob. It's like a little rotary
trim
knob. Trim tab. But I'm just explaining this for someone who might not know. So to make these like micro adjustments to where the plane is going to be aiming. I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. Well,
so they had to retrim it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I was going to say your flaps, or not your flaps, your ailerons, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, the main wing flaps that move up and down that change the pitch, right? If you're nose up or nose down, right? Yeah. You control those with the stick, right? But if you're playing, depending on whatever the weight or the balance of the plane and the speed and all that, you can adjust where those want to sit without pulling on the stick, so that you can keep the plane flying straight.
Basically, yes, in a nutshell. And then as the co-pilot, Radicek, turns around to look at what the flight engineer is seeing, they all suddenly they feel this like pop. Their ears all pop, and they're like, oh, what the hell was that? And this was noted, depending on the source and depending on whose clock you're watching. It's somewhere between 8:11 and 8:13. This happens.
Yeah, because there was no internet to sync everyone's clocks exactly.
Nobody's clocks were the same. So somewhere between 8:11, 8:13. I believe it's closer to 8:11 though. But we don't know if it was like 8:11 and 30 seconds or 8:11 and 59 seconds. But, you know, you get the idea.
because no one was counting the seconds.
You pretty much.
Oh,
yeah.
Only the minutes. Still, 2 minutes is a pretty narrow window.
Correct.
2 to 3 minute window, pretty narrow.
Correct. And meanwhile, Sage radar is tracking this the flight, because back in the day, anytime there would be an aircraft that would squawk, I believe it was 3100 on the transponder. This would automatically alert the military that you've been hijacked. So there's an actual code that you can put into the transponder that alerts the authorities that you've been hijacked. And anytime that happened back in the day, Sage radar, which was the predecessor to NORAD, would get involved. And what they would do is they would automatically lock on to you. They would treat you as a bogey. The Air Force would, presumably deploy fighters to follow you. And 2 F-106 Delta Darts were dispatched to follow the aircraft, but it was going so slow that they couldn't keep up with it. Because the Delta Darts, their stall speed was way too fast to keep up with it. So they had to make these S-turns. It was a pain in the ass. They couldn't follow it.
Yeah.
So
because Delta Darts are interceptors, right? That they are designed to haul ass. They have
basically
this really, really small wing profile. So they don't fly well at low speeds.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, which is another thing that makes me wonder: did DB Cooper foresee this? Right? Like, did he foresee Air Force planes coming to intercept and follow them? Is that also why he had the plane fly as low and slow as it did?
It could have been, right? It could have been. But one thing you have to keep in mind is I don't think that this guy was a genius who foresaw all of the things that happened correctly for him. I think that it was a mix. I think it was a mix of luck and good planning.
Okay.
Some things just fell, in his favor.
Yeah,
I think that's what it
true.
is.
They could have deployed anything to intercept. If they were close enough to somewhere where they were going to deploy something to tail and keep track of them, and whoever made the decision to deploy planes should have realized the speed that this aircraft was flying at, and deployed something with a much slower, or a much lower stall speed.
Yeah. Well, the point I want to make in all of this is that we know the exact flight path within about a quarter mile in any direction, because back then Sage radar, what would happen was, like, if there was an airplane that was flagged as a bogey, it would automatically start pinging the location of the hijacked aircraft, or the bogey aircraft rather, within about a quarter mile to half a mile radius. And what it would do is it would ping the location using different radars all over the country, and it would record it back onto a hard drive. And this was like state-of-the-art technology back in the early 70s. So we know we have like timestamps of where this aircraft was recorded onto a hard drive from the predecessor to NORAD.
Yeah. And the ping would occur every 60 seconds. That's what the timestamps are.
No, actually, I think it was every 5 to 10 seconds.
Then why are the timestamps set every minute?
Well, when you really want to see that many numbers?
Okay.
We're looking at a map, by the way, of the where the aircraft was minute by minute. And Kyle's wondering why we don't see it. Why don't we know where it was 5 seconds after that?
Fair point. Yeah, I thought the ping was every 60 seconds, but yeah, that would make more sense to ping a lot sooner than that, because if it's designed to ping a bogey or potential enemy aircraft, right? If it's an enemy fighter jet interceptor like the Delta Dart, it would be hauling ass, and it would cover a lot of ground every 60 seconds. Correct.
So when it comes to the case of DB Cooper, a lot of people question the flight plan, but it's a pretty solid. It's airtight. These are based on actual radar pings of this thing's location.
Yeah,
and with timestamps.
And it wasn't just Sage tracking this thing. Like, I know it's like where we got the info from, but it wasn't the FAA also tracking where this plane was, because they did that back in the day. They probably didn't ping planes as often as Sage or with as much accuracy,
Not in the same way that Sage was, I believe. So, yeah, but I'm just saying, Sage, we have a written record on a hard drive of where the hell this thing was at any given point in time.
Yeah.
And then when you look at, the stretch between 811 and 813, he jumps out. He presumably jumps out somewhere to, if you take 811 and 0 seconds, right to the east of La Center, Washington. And if you want to go all the way up to 813, he might have jumped out slightly west of Battleground. So there's this stretch of territory there, presumably of when he jumped. And that is based on the pressure bump that the aircrew felt in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to explain a couple things. The ears popping, I did look into this. That was from the aft staircase, right? So it's down, but it's all the way down as DB Cooper stands on it because his weight is holding it down. If he's not standing on it, it's actually kind of parallel with the body of the plane because of the airspeed is actually holding the thing up. Mm-hmm. So the moment he steps off of it, right, there's a huge weight difference, right? And the airspeed actually slaps the tail, the aft staircase all the way back up, and that is what creates a big wave of pressure that runs through the whole body of the airplane all the way to the cabin and causes the ears to pop.
That's correct. Yeah, it's like a diving board or something.
Yeah. I looked into that. One of my previous theories was maybe he could have like bounced up and down on the stairs, right, to cause the banging and the jolting, and then later gently rolled off the stairs, to throw this all off. But in what I researched, it actually made sense. Whether jumping up and down the stairs did anything or not, the moment he took his weight off the stairs, the staircase snaps back up into the ass of the plane and creates this pressure wave that causes the ears to pop. Right? No matter how gently he may have left it, this violent change in pressure was going to happen.
Correct. And they also did a test sometime later to figure out if this pressure bump was him leaving the aircraft. So what they did was they took the flight engineer up on this exact craft in the aircraft. They did a test. They pushed a 200-pound sled out the back of it to see if this recreates the same effect. And what do you know? It did. So we know that was from when he jumped.
Yeah.
It was caused from when he jumped.
All right. So we know roughly when he jumped, within like a few minutes at most, right? We know the exact location of the aircraft during this whole time, right? And then according to DB Cooper Sleuth, who I know you've been watching a lot of videos and I watched some videos to get info, he overlaid the flight path on a map with like a 4-minute window, right? And then he highlighted the possible area where he could have landed, right? And it's all east of the flight path because he did the research and said that night the winds were blowing from the west to the east. And so if you're wearing a parachute that you can't steer, he would have never wound up to the west side of the flight path. It's just physically impossible.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I've got this map open with satellite imagery of the area taken in 1971. And it's got a slider so I can actually look at what the area looked like today versus back then. And I got to say, it does not look too different. It's a semi-rural area. There's a misconception that DB Cooper jumped out over the wilderness into like a vast wilderness or something, and that is not the case. It's just several miles away from the 5 freeway.
Yeah.
And
so just to clarify, when you say semi-rural, you mean partly rural and partly wooded, right?
Yeah.
Or do you mean partly rural and partly like populated?
It is partly populated. I mean, look at how many roads there are. There's people's houses scattered about.
Yeah, but I
You
mean, yes, I see it as like mostly rural with like patches of like woods. You know, like I wouldn't consider it semi-rural because like there's like I don't know, it doesn't seem to be much of like towns, but there's blatantly a lot of farmland, right? There is a lot of farmland. There seems to be more farmland than there are woods. You know,
Yeah.
developed farmland, plenty of places to land and not get tangled up in trees.
But the point I'm making is that there's people's houses around. You know, I'm not saying he jumped out over suburbia or something, but I mean, there's people's houses scattered about, farmland, you know, country roads around. The 5 freeway is just several miles away. So it's the misconception that I had and other people have about him just jumping out over the wilderness basically is I'm surprised to know that actually that's not the case.
He did not jump out in like the middle of the forest.
Yeah, which was my original conception.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you have anything to say about the location that he jumped out at? Anything more you want to add?
No, we got that. So that should just evolve into where he landed, which we're kind of touching on right now.
Yeah.
You know?
So another misconception that some people have is that he was jumping out into a rainstorm or like some freezing weather without proper clothing. The issue with this, though, is that the weather that night was scattered light rain showers. That's how it was classified. Scattered light rain showers. And the ground temperature in that area was only 44 degrees Fahrenheit, which I mean, it's above the freezing point. You're not going to freeze to death.
No, it's chilly for sure, you know, but yeah, you are not going to freeze to death.
Yeah. And then the other issue is that I just think if this guy was a skilled parachutist and he died on the jump, I think that we would have found him, especially because like this is not rural enough to where this guy could have just like slammed into the ground somewhere and nobody ever found him again, because this area was combed through using FBI agents and the army. And also, I just think that if, like, for example, he opens his parachute, he hits the ground too hard, gets knocked, hits his head or something and dies. Well, there's a giant ass parachute floating around with a dead body attached to it. We would have found the guy.
Yes.
And then it's like, again, we found some of the money, which I think we should get into now. So, Kyle, do you have any ideas on how that money ended up on Tina Bar?
Man, dude, the Tina Bar is like the best thing and worst thing to ever come about the DB Cooper case. It's the only physical evidence found after the fact, you know, aside from what was left on the plane, right? It's the only money that was ever found. So what was it, like $5,800? Some kid in I've written down right here, February 10th, 1980. Right, a family was just on the banks of the Columbia River, the spot called Tina Bar, and this kid just had his little plastic rake, and he was just raking through the sand, having fun, and he just rolls up 3 wads of cash. Right, they've been badly deteriorated. They were 20s, and they checked all the serials, and they matched all of the serial numbers that were part of the money, part of the $200,000 that was given to DB Cooper. Right, so they're like, okay. Here's evidence. First evidence, right? The money. It exists, right? And it's roughly in the same area, right? The Columbia River, even closer than the 5 freeway to where he supposedly landed.
Well, okay. Do you know where Tina Bar is? Did you actually look this up on the map?
I did look this up on the map. Yeah. I can't find my screenshot, but I did look this up on the map. It is south of where the supposed jump zone and potential landing zones are, right? But the current, the flow of the river is actually from south to north, right? So like that also throws the whole thing off, right?
Well,
Is he would have landed.
He's jumping in an area where there's no river to carry it into the Columbia.
No. That's incorrect. He's jumping in an area where there are no less than 2 rivers in his potential landing zone that do feed into the Columbia River. The problem is they all feed downstream of where
Correct.
Tina Bar is.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So even if the money had landed in the water there, it should have never washed up on Tina Bar. Plus, then we get into the whole diatom thing, right? The diatoms they found on the money prove beyond a doubt that the money could not have landed in the water on the night of the jump, right? Because the diatoms are these little particles.
They're
right?
algae.
They're microscopic algae that have this, for lack of a better term, like glass casing on it, right? And certain species of algae in all the waters around the world, they have different seasons where they bloom, right? And for the Columbia River, the type of diatoms they found on it only bloom in the summer and the spring, right? And the Columbia River has these like two common algae, right? They have like a summer bloom algae and like a fall and winter bloom algae. They only found this spring summer algae on it. And so it proves that it couldn't have landed because this was November, right? So the money couldn't have been there. Also, it proves that the money was never in the water for more than 6 months because they would have found both types of diatoms on the money.
Yeah, see, this is some shit that like I've gone back and forth. I'm sure if you asked me this question tomorrow, I'd come up with a different answer. But I'm going to go back and say it. I'm going to have to recant my original conclusion that he died. I think that this, I wouldn't say proves that he survived, but I think that all available evidence suggests that he fucking got away with it. So
yeah, the fact that there's no body, the fact that there's no parachute, no bomb ever found, right? No, yeah, and aside from this small amount, like 3% of the cash he had, no money ever found.
So what's interesting about the cash is that during the flight, while he's kind of shooting the shit with the flight attendants, he tries to tip them each $2,000, like one little packet of money, and they turn it down and they're like, oh no, we can't accept gratuities or something along those lines. And they got kind of like scolded for this because it's like, dude, you could have taken $2,000 away from this guy. We could have had the money back. But anyway, the way that the way that the money was packaged together were in $10,000 bundles. So like they were rubber banded together in $10,000 bundles, but in $2,000 packets, right? So what they found on Tina Bar were 3 packets of money, 3 $2,000 packets of money, right? $6,000
right.
Rubber banded together, which is weird because like two $2,000 packets were missing from it. Yeah. Which is interesting because maybe this was the money that he came from the money that he tried to tip her with. You know?
That's a possibility. I don't know. The whole Tina Bar money thing is definitely the weirdest, right? It throws like the biggest wrench in everything, which could be by design, because it is scientifically proven that there's no way that this money landed in water on the night of the jump. Right. Not to mention that it's near impossible that any of the rivers or streams or whatever he could have jumped over or near. Right. They would have, if money did wind up in it, it wouldn't have washed to Tina Bar because all that shit was, it feeds into the Columbia River downstream of where Tina Bar is, Yeah. Yeah. And also the money, it wasn't in the water for a decade. Right. Because there's only
we don't know when it actually, like which year it touched the water. We don't know that. You can only speculate. We don't know if it went in the water like the very next summer or if it was closer to when it was found. We just don't know.
Yeah, correct. But we do know that it couldn't have been in the water for more than 6 months at all, or else you would have had both types of diatoms on it.
So what's your
So,
best guess on how that money got there?
man, I that it's to me it sounds like it was planted. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it sounds like it was planted because I mean, what are the other odds that it wound up in the water and in a period of less than 6 months it just wound up in sand? You know, it's not impossible, but yeah, like if that money got unintentionally lost, right, it should have been in the water for a lot longer. I would
Yeah,
think.
see, I do agree with you. I do think that it was planted there. I'm revising um, my original hypothesis here. I do think it was planted there, and that's definitely an option. I think that he could have planted a small bit of money there, expecting it to be found sooner than it actually was. To throw authorities off.
Yeah.
But another possibility I was kicking around in my head is that he lands and he needs a ride into town from somewhere, and he generously tips the person who gives him a ride. Maybe they don't realize that he's DB Cooper. He hands him leaves behind a fat stack of bills in the guy's car, drives home unwittingly. Hears the news the next day, finds the money in his car, and he's like, "Oh shit! Like, I don't want any part of this. I'm gonna just get rid of this money. I'm gonna bury it
Yeah.
somewhere else where."
It's a possibility. That you said something once. That Tina Bar had been dredged at least once, right? Like I don't know, maybe if somehow this cash wound up on like the shore or something, and during like a dredging process, it just got wet with like summer water, right? So it never really like wound up in the water, just some like wet sand with no way for new algae to make new diatoms on it when fall and winter roll around. I don't know.
Mhm. No, I'm thinking that the money was buried there, kind of up, like towards the uppermost part of the shoreline, right?
Yeah.
Where, because during summer the Columbia River floods, like that's flood season, May, June. When the summer
Okay.
diatoms are found. I'm thinking it was just buried somewhere up higher, and the summer water is the only water that could have reached it.
Okay. So then that's a really good theory too, right? Because that would explain why there's only summer diatoms
Mm-hmm.
on the money, right? Because if it so that means it could have been buried on the banks, right? Like even like the night of the jump, right? And then only summer water is ever introduced to it, right?
Yeah,
During floods, it's the only time it ever gets up that high.
yeah. I mean, that's the
So
best I got, is that it was
that
buried there, and the water line only touched the money during the summer when the water level's highest.
I like that. I like that. I did not
But then it's
count
like,
that.
why was it buried there? And by the way, I watched this presentation by this hydrologist who was talking about, could the money have been buried there by natural process? And the short answer is no. Um, not the way that it was buried. It could not have been buried there by natural process. So basically, Tina Bar is like a man-made beach that had to constantly be redredged over and over to keep it there, because the river currents are slowly eroding it away. It's
Ha,
not
ha,
it's not there anymore in the same form that it was back then, because the
ha,
river currents have kind
how
of destroyed it. Yeah, what?
how often is constantly dredged?
Every decade or so, I want to say. I'm not. I could be wrong, but yeah, like roughly every decade, I want to say. But I don't think it was
Okay.
consistent. But the Army Corps of Engineers was
Yeah.
in the area
Yeah.
doing semi-regular dredging. So we don't know though, because like the last time it was dredged was in 1974, like between like when the money was found in 1980. The previous time it was dredged was 74, which
Okay.
was after
So
the hijacking. But we know that the money was found where it was buried above a dredge layer, We just don't know if the dredge layer was from a prior dredging or from that nearest, the more recent one.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating because we don't know exactly when it doesn't tell us when it was buried. We just know that it was buried above a dredge layer.
Yeah. The Tina Bar money created more answers than it fucking answered. Right? Yes. It created more questions than it answered.
Yeah. I mean, the best I got is that it was planted there by someone, maybe DB Cooper, expecting it to be found rather quickly. Maybe he thought that, oh, I'll bury this money here, and then when it's found, they'll think that I fell into the drink, you know?
Yeah, something.
But I don't think that he knew that they would be able to know exactly where and when he jumped due to that pressure bump. I don't think he foresaw that happening.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows? I don't know. The Columbia River seems like a great escape route, right? Like he seemed to land within just like a few miles of it, you know, in all of his potential landing zones. Granted, he should have landed north of Tina Bar, you know, but I mean, like if he was trying to escape on foot through the darkness, you know, maybe he did drop these things. Like I know it says that they couldn't have been buried by natural process, you know, but like if he just dropped a couple stacks,
yeah, like if he chucked it into the river, it's not going to wash up and then bury it. It could wash up, but it's not going to like bury itself like that, because the banks of Tina Bar are constantly in a state of like being eroded away by the currents. So the sand is like, it's not washing more sand up to bury stuff, right? It's taking sand away. And that's kind of why Brian Ingram, the kid who found the money, was able to find it. It was buried super shallow by the time that he buried it. He just basically brushed off the surface of the sand and bam, it was like right there.
So it makes more sense that someone may have buried it deep long before it was dug up. And then the constant, you know, the constant changing of the summer floods, right? The rising of the waters should be washing sand away, bringing this thing closer and closer to the surface every year.
Correct. Yeah, that's my understanding, and it makes the most sense to me as well. But again, it's like I don't have a plausible explanation for how the money got there to begin with. You know, like who buried it there and why?
Yeah, why only $6,000 out of 200? Right? Are there a bunch of stashes of $6,000 all up and down the Columbia River? Like, is that where he hid it all?
That's the thing. The FBI came in and they tore that area up. Like they tore that area up looking for more of the money, and they just never found any more.
Yeah. And it's not like some greedy person would have just like, ooh, I found a bundle of fucking $2,000 to keep it because it was all destroyed. You know, it would have been fucking worthless. You know, yeah. And that's another thing. So we mentioned in the original DB Cooper episode we did that all of the money was recorded and the authorities were on the lookout for it coming back into circulation. The issue with this, though, is that there was no like automated system that would just automatically flag, you know, a $20 bill coming in and the serial number and that sort of thing. So it would have to be like some suspicious bank employee manually checking it. And these banknote numbers, the serial numbers, were made available mostly just to banks on the West Coast. So and these like I said, like it could have easily just disappeared in currency, like in circulated currency, and nobody flagged it, especially if he just kind of like spent it little by little instead of trying to drop fucking like $200,000 on a Ferrari or some shit, you know, in $20 bills. Yeah. I was looking into the whole, you know, no money was ever found aside from the Tina Bar money thing, right? And the whole recorded serial numbers. I was digging in that today, right? And then I came across two big things. They interviewed FBI agent Larry Carr, and according to him, right after they made all of these serial numbers public and gave them to the banks, right? on the West Coast only. He said most banks gave up checking all the serial numbers and all the 20s that came through after only 3 months. And then basically virtually every other bank that had this info, after 6 months, they gave up. They quit checking the money because
needle in a fucking haystack.
Yeah. And then the other big thing is like, well, so all currency, right, eventually gets super worn out. Like if it's in circulation, and it goes back to the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, who's responsible for destroying it all, right? And so they interviewed a Treasury officer with the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, who has like 30 years of experience, like a 30-year career working here. And he basically laughed the whole thing off. And he's like, dude, these are government employees. Like, they are not going to take extra time. They're not going to go the extra mile. Yeah, exactly. And they're like, we get truckloads of money on a weekly, if not daily basis that all need to be shredded. Like the stuff, even back then with no computers, right? It's not processed or anything. Like we don't scan these things,
Yeah, and they didn't start recording serial numbers of destroyed money until the early 90s. So plenty of time for this stuff to just go out of circulation naturally.
Yeah, to just wait like, a year or even 2, and then no one's looking for the money anymore, right? And you do it kind of like they do in the movies, you just go gamble with it, Yeah,
he could have went to Vegas and laundered it in Vegas. I mean, he wouldn't even have had to do that, but I think he could have just spent it normally and nobody would have fucking found it.
Yeah. But I mean, if you want to wash big chunks at once, you roll into a casino, you go to the teller, you give them 10 grand, and they give you 10 grand worth of chips, right? And you hang out and you gamble for 5-6 hours, like whatever, right? You probably lose a little bit, but then you go back to the teller with the chips you got left, and then they just give you different cash. You just got to be there long enough for the money security to come in with their big cart and swap the bills out of the teller. And then once they get new bills in, you turn your chips in, you get, washed money back essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thought crossed my mind too, is like, what if he went to Vegas and laundered it there? We're almost done. There are just a couple more points I want to touch upon. I mean, I don't think that this is going to be the last episode I do about DB Cooper. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm kind of getting tired of talking about Bigfoot. I'm tired of dunking on Bigfoot people because it's just way too easy.
Speaking of which, thanks for reminding me. I was going to send you an email about this. I should have. I got a screenshot of this, but in this possible landing zone, right? There seems to be a weird glitch on Google Maps. And I kind of made the joke that Google has marked the exact landing zone of DB Cooper, right? Because there's like just this one plot of farmland that's highlighted in red for like no reason, right?
Really?
And it's it's within the possible landing zone, right? And when I looked it up on Google Maps, one of the closest things that popped up is the North American Bigfoot Center.
Oh man. So maybe DB Cooper and Bigfoot are linked somehow. Maybe Bigfoot took him.
Yeah, he used that 200 grand to open the North American Bigfoot Center.
We can't rule it out, man. All right, so we gotta talk a little bit about the spring diatoms that were found on the money. So you were mostly correct about what it shows. The issue is that the spring diatoms and the spring diatoms and the winter diatoms, they never fully disappear, right? But we're just talking about like the ratios between spring diatoms and fall diatoms, right? So we're still going to have smaller amounts of the winter fall diatoms because those never completely vanish during summer. But we're going to have like the summer bloom of the summer diatoms. So what the scientist is saying is that the amount of summer diatoms is consistent with levels you would find in water, in the water of the Columbia River during summer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, and as for whether the diatoms could make it into the money from the sand, the sand acting as a filter to filter these things out. The sand would act as a filter to a certain extent, but as the sand gets saturated with more and more diatoms, it's going to eventually fail, basically. And some of them are going to get through. So the sand isn't going to prevent all the diatoms from reaching the money. So it's kind of a bunk argument there that it fell into the river and then washed up and got buried. It could have easily have just been buried there dry, and the diatoms could have naturally seeped into the money over the years.
Yep.
So that's another point that I wanted to make there. But the next big thing we got to talk about, Kyle, is the tie and the tie particles that were found. So,
right,
you kind of dove into this one maybe a little bit more than I did. So why don't you kick this off?
I actually did not dive into the tie at all.
Oh.
Right. Because I don't think the tie was his, and I still stand by that. Right. With all of the other meticulous planning, right, of not like leaving behind like the bomb in this maybe a green plastic bag, right, and like leaving no evidence, no one found anything, no one found his shoes or his sunglasses or parachute or anything like that. I don't think he left behind a clip-on tie on accident. I think it's just another red herring,
Yeah, you could be right. It seems like most people believe that he left it behind by accident, but there's a case to be made that he might have done it on purpose. Like, hey, this isn't even. I bought this at a thrift store the other day, and fuck this tie. I don't need it. This could be. So, okay, so the part. This is another rabbit hole that I don't want to dive down, but I'm going to anyway. So based on what was the particles that were found in the tie, all kinds of crazy metal particles were found using an electron microscope, including unprocessed uranium, certain like unprocessed titanium. But in a nutshell, this would suggest somebody working in like mining or in like a foundry or some kind of a blue collar kind of shop, but like very specialized, like maybe an aircraft factory or something like that.
Yeah, but that's not where you find unprocessed titanium. In fact, it is there such a thing? Because titanium on the periodic table of elements, or is titanium made by?
No, titanium is an element.
Okay,
but so because this is out of my wheelhouse, I'm not very versed in chemistry, but I'm with you, Kyle. I'm very suspicious about this even being his tie in the first place. I think this is something that he could have picked up at a thrift shop. The thing, though, that I do find interesting is that this tie, whether it was his or not, or whether it was picked up by a thrift store, was like a black skinny tie. And my understanding is that these were kind of more popular in the mid 60s. These were more fashionable by the mid 60s, but by the early 70s, they were kind of falling out of fashion. And it was a clip-on tie. So this was not a regular tie. This was a clip-on tie.
Yeah.
Now, whoever this belonged to, it doesn't surprise me that it could have belonged to somebody who worked in some kind of a foundry, like a manager walking around with a clipboard, making sure everyone's doing their jobs properly, like something like that.
Yeah.
Or a mining company, something like that, right? You'd wear a clip-on tie in that kind of environment to make sure that, if it gets caught in a piece of machinery, it doesn't suck you in and mulch you.
Yep.
So again, though, whether or not this was his tie is up for debate. I'm with you, Kyle. I don't think it was. I lean more towards this maybe being picked up at a thrift store, because I think that DB Cooper was more of a hardened criminal type. I don't think that this was a good guy gone rogue. I think that this was a guy who has done stuff like this before.
Yeah.
I mean, just my opinion. What about you?
I don't know if it's a dude who's done stuff like robberies before, but I think the fact that he was cool, calm, and collected was that he was a veteran who'd been trained to jump out of planes. I think that he's probably seen action. He's been in way more intense situations than holding a plane hostage with a maybe fake bomb.
Yeah, at minimum, I don't think this was his first rodeo, so to speak. I think that he's done shit like this before. But again, it's like I think that he was somewhere on the sociopathic / psychopathic spectrum of personality disorders. I don't think that he was a guy who was too empathetic of other people. And I'm just talking about from the standpoint of just brain chemistry, right?
Yeah.
I'm just talking from a clinical standpoint. I think that he had some sort of a psychopathic, sociopathic disorder with muted stress response. This is me speculating wildly right now, but this would explain being totally cool and collected while he's doing this, committing a capital offense. Back then, he could have gotten the death penalty for this, by the way. So
nice. All right. All right, so earlier you brought up something I hadn't heard before, but it was the CIA angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you said that there was a connection about how the CIA used to drop cargo into Vietnam to special forces behind enemy lines with like the exact same airspeed, altitude, flap angle, all that good jazz, right?
Yep.
So like what if he was CIA, former or current CIA,
it's something that some people believe, you're not going out on a limb by suggesting that. It's a possibility. It's just, what do you think is the most likely though?
I think the most likely is former spec ops, right? And then just combined with a lot of luck of everything going right, I don't know any CIA agents personally. I just know like what you see in movies, and they're, usually portrayed as these like super spies, like James Bond. It's like everything is done with intent, right? Their minds work like master chess players. They see 100 moves ahead, right? So the whole thing could be perfectly planned out and calculated, right? Like the number of cigarette butts he left behind, the tie he left behind, the drink he ordered, the things he said to the flight attendants, right? It could have all been planned and scripted from the very start,
So I just want to mention, in case in case some of our listeners didn't actually bother listening to the full episode of DB Cooper we did, episode 21, the FBI field office in Las Vegas, they tried to take fingerprints from the cigarettes, but when none were lifted, they just decided to throw them away. So they didn't know about DNA. So because they couldn't get any fingerprints off of him, they're like, these are worthless. We'll just throw them in the trash. But as it turns out, we could have probably figured out who the guy was by now if we still had those.
Yeah. And which also means that whatever drink cup he had probably suffered the same fate,
That's true. I don't know what happened to the drink cup.
Yeah. Yeah, why is that never brought up? It's like, oh, the cigarette butts would have had his DNA because it had his mouth on it. Well, wouldn't the fucking 7 and 7 cup have mouth DNA on it too? Not to mention that would be where you'd get your best fingerprints from, right? Is a glass, whether it's glass or plastic.
I'm not sure what became of the cup, but I think nothing became of it either.
Yeah.
So anyway, you think he was special forces or something like that? I mean, that's the more romanticized version of DB Cooper. We think of him as like some wronged veteran or something like that who decided to kind of stick it to the man and get take what he deserves, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's probably the case, man. I'm trying to be realistic here. I think that this guy was just a criminal.
Yeah, I mean, like I get that too, but at the same time, like what kind of criminal like can just hijack a plane and hold it for ransom and get away with like the whole thing, right? Like first try. As far as we know, there were no accomplices on the plane. I'm pretty sure there was an accomplice on the ground, right? Which helped him get away, helped him pack a chute, and make sure no evidence was left behind.
I thought that originally too, but the problem with that though is that he didn't know exactly what flight path the plane was going to take. So he had no way to actually communicate with somebody on the ground because he didn't know exactly where he was going to go.
That's a fair point. If he said fly from here to Mexico City, right? And they say, oh,
because planes don't fly in a straight line anyway. They take different airways and stuff. Like they fly on roads in the air. You don't just draw a straight line to your destination. That would be absolute chaos.
But on that note, those air lanes are predetermined, right? And this flight did follow predetermined air lanes, Now,
but there was no discussion about which ones they were going to take along the way.
Correct. Yeah. You'd really have to have inside knowledge and be really confident that, like, hey, that they're going to take off from SeaTac and they're going to land in Reno. This is the only route that they're going to take, Yeah.
See, I don't think that there was a way for him to plausibly know exactly where he was going to jump out. I think his plan was like, all right, I'm going to jump out. Hopefully I land without getting stuck in a tree somewhere. I'm going to, stuff my parachute, hide the money. I'm going to either walk into town somewhere or hitch a ride as a hitchhiker into town. I'm going to remember exactly where I put this shit. I'm going to either rent a car or find my own car if I'm close enough to it. I'm going to drive back to where I stashed the stuff. I'm going to retrieve it and head on my way. I think that was his plan.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, because you're right. He probably had no way of knowing exactly, like, even within, like, no amount of accuracy of, like, which path this plane would take, I mean, honestly, considering that you're flying out of Seattle and you want this thing to go to Mexico City, I'm surprised they weren't like, well, because you have a bomb on board to protect the people on the ground, we're going to fly over the ocean,
That's funny that you bring that up. So I think it was Bill Radicek, the co-pilot, I was listening to the actual radio transmissions or I can't remember if it was or just a transcript, but basically he's trying to wink, wink, nudge, nudge when he's talking to the air traffic controllers about maybe we should fly over the ocean because of this bomb, or whatever. And they're like, no, it's fine. You can fly. Take Victor 23, which was the airway that they were going to fly down. And he's trying to get them to fly over because he's trying to kill him because there's cloud cover, right? And he's trying to get him to just jump over the ocean.
Yeah.
But they're not buying it. They just tell him, no, you're taking Victor 23, and they won't let him fly over the ocean. So it's kind of funny. He's trying to get him to jump over the ocean.
Yeah. That would have been smart too. Yeah.
But yeah, they weren't taking the hint.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think this guy was just I don't know about common criminal, but I think he's been in trouble. I don't think this was the first heist he ever did. This guy's probably got a record. Probably served in World War II, judging by his age. I think he's probably a paratrooper, or maybe if not a paratrooper, some kind of air crew who's familiar with parachuting. Yeah, probably sociopathic, psychopathic, but not in a malicious way, just in a completely self-serving way.
Yeah.
That's the best I got. As for all the suspects, we could go over all the different kinds of suspects, but at the end of the day, I have not seen a single one that I think is actually DB Cooper, so I'm not even going to waste my time doing that. But
yeah, I think the FBI would have found him, if any one of their prime suspects was actually the guy, for as long as they've been after this, So yeah, I don't think I don't think they ever figured it out, you know. Yeah. Plus, you know, the same thing with the whole that there was never a missing persons, as far as we know, reported of people in the area. You know, it's just another thing that proves that he probably survived and, you know, went back on with whatever life he was leading.
Yeah.
You know.
And the other thing that kind of points me in the direction that this guy might have been like some kind of a psychopath, sociopath, is that, he might have been inspired by that Paul Sini hijacking that we talked about earlier on in the episode. That there was only about 11 days between that hijacking and the DB Cooper hijacking. Can you imagine going from no plan at all to implementing this hijacking in just a little over a week?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
If I was planning to do that, I would be like, I need more time than that. Like, I need to really think this through.
Yeah.
But this guy was just cool as a cucumber. Like, yeah, no, I'll do this in about a week and a half or something. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's just I'm gonna put in like a 7-day notice at work that I quit my job, and you know, yeah.
I'm not even convinced that this guy had a job. I think his job was criminal. But dude, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's either that or it's just a weird coincidence where parallel thinking happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say either a coincidence or, you know, inspired by the original botched hijacking. But yeah, no, you're right. That is pretty bananas. That like if you read about that in the news and then a mere 11 days later you were pulling off the same exact stunt, you know. But then again, you know, if you don't have a job and a family, you got nothing but time on your hands, right? No distractions, no TV and video games and social media addiction. You really got nothing to do but sit around and plan this thing out, you know?
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, just thinking about a week and a half from zero plan to implementing this insane plan. So
yeah,
I think I wouldn't say he's like a genius or anything, but I think he's definitely above average intelligence with some kind of a criminal personality disorder. And like I said, I'm not sure if the bomb was real or not, but I do lean more towards it being real than I think most researchers do. I think most researchers are pretty convinced that it was fake, but I'm not so sure. I think that he might have made a real bomb as a contingency plan. He might, because he did say, I'm not going to prison. Like, and I think that there's a solid chance that he was serious.
Okay. Yeah, no, that is fair.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to bring up before we get out of here, man?
I don't think so, man. I think
Are you willing to do a third in the trilogy? Maybe not immediately, but are you willing to revisit this one someday?
Yeah, if you want, man, we can revisit it, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to do what everyone else does. We're going to dive deeper down the rabbit hole and just uncover more and more evidence that only proves that we don't know shit.
But that's why this is so fun.
Yeah, you think this is fun? I don't know. It's kind of infuriating, honestly. You know, I'm like watching all these videos,
dude. We're
doing all this research, and like at the end of every article, at the end of every video, it's just, and here's the proof that we don't have any proof.
We're in the business of unsolved mysteries, so of course, like after every single one, it's gonna be nothing but fury, man.
Oh man, you some sort of masochist? You enjoy this?
I enjoy laying in bed and trying to figure shit out like a puzzle. But yeah. Anyway, not to keep our listeners here for any longer. Is that all you want to say, or are we gonna get out of here?
I think we can get out of here.
All right, man. Let's get out of here. Like sands through the hourglass, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time
Remember, folks, the truth is out there, somewhere in the ether, and through our powers combined, we'll solve that sumbitch once and for all.
This is Super Mystery Bros.
You know what I've been doing is I've been getting into these like albums, right? Like I've been just picking up on songs I've liked for like a long time, right? And then just checking out like the albums that they came from, you know. So like I've been getting into these albums that were big like we were in high school, but I only knew like a song or two off of them, like Alien Ant Farm Anthology, you know,
Yeah.
just fucking amazing album. I'm starting to go through like I'm starting to go through like the Led Zeppelin albums, you know. Yeah, so I'm trying to give albums like a listen to, you know. So it's not exactly like expanding my horizon to different bands, but it's getting more into like bands I like their deep cut discography, just finding bangers I never knew existed.
Yeah, dude, most bands who have those one-hit wonders, like that's just their shitty. I don't know. To me, it's like just a so-so song usually.
Yeah, because it's
and then
what
they've
like
got some bangers in the background.
yeah, it's what the producers know that like the masses will eat up, right?
Yeah.
You know, the masses aren't all musicians. They don't all have refined musical tastes like you or I. You know? Yeah. Here's a really good example. You remember the song "Handlebars" by Flowbot? It was way overplayed.
Maybe
could
if I
ride my
heard
bike
it, I
with-
would.
Oh
Yeah,
I can remember, yeah. So I listened to that album, dude. There are some bangers on that album, like way good stuff, you know. But they never had any other tune come out on the radio aside from "Handlebars." It was like their most simplistic tune on the whole album.
It's a shame, ain't it?
Yeah.